Welcome to the Splatoon Iceberg, Tier 1, Great Turf War. Almost all of Splatoon's lore, before anything we see in the campaigns, is told through sunken scrolls, collectibles you get throughout the single-player levels. And one of the biggest things mentioned in these scrolls is the Great Turf War. Before everything in the games, there were two main species, Inklings and Octarians, and relations were high. There weren't many issues between the two, but sea levels started to rise, rising to a point where they ended up waging war for the little land remaining. And the Octarians won the first battle, because the Inklings, quote, couldn't wake up on time. But there were other battles as well, like ones where the Octarians had massive weapons that were most likely gonna guarantee them the win, but their plugs were pulled. Yeah, it's a bit silly. The other battles ended up with the Inklings being the victors. The Octarians were eventually defeated, so they fled underground for nearly a century. Not all the Octarians did, as some can be just seen around Inkopolis. I mean, Marina's an Octoling and people just thought her hair looked kinda different. A lot of characters don't really give it a second thought, but the majority of the ones who fought in the war are still all in hiding. Until the campaign starts, of course. Octoling mind control devices. At the end of the Splatoon 2 campaign, it's revealed that Callie, one of the announcers in Splatoon 1, was being mind-controlled into working for DJ Octavio. And the way she was being mind-controlled was through these funky-looking glasses. They get blasted off and Callie's freed from the mind control, but it was theorized by many fans that the glasses that Callie had on her face were the same ones seen on all the Octolings in Splatoon 2's campaign, and possibly a simple redesign of the goggles seen on the Octolings in Splatoon 1. The theory going that Octavio is controlling all the Octolings with them, but this isn't necessarily ever explicitly said. Sure, Callie was mind-controlled, that's confirmed, but a lot of what leads fans to believe all of the Octolings were mind-controlled is more implied than anything, and lots of mistranslations. If the Octolings were being mind-controlled, there's way more evidence for it being done through Octavio's music than any form of eyewear. But even then, through interviews and devs and other dialogue in the game, it's explained that this is way more of a military discipline type of control and not necessarily a forceful mind control. It's also been mentioned that the goggles are to help with aim. The Octolings who fought for Octavio may have been on the wrong side, but it was because of loyalty, not mind control. Inklings are boneless. The whole reason Inklings can turn into their squid form and not break every bone in their body is because they don't have bones in their body. In real life, squids and octopuses have what's called a hydrostatic skeleton, which isn't a skeleton in the same way we have, but more of a flexible one that can either bend or stiffen out. And there's no bones whatsoever. Instead, it's small cavities surrounded by muscles all throughout the body. That's how both octopuses and squids can do things like fitting through small places that are way tinier than pretty much any part of their body. This is what I'm gonna assume is implied when the scroll says Inklings don't have any bones. And this next bit isn't an entry in the iceberg, but I thought it was interesting to cover. Why do Inklings die when they go into water? Well, outside of it just being an obstacle in multiplayer, there's actually a lore reason to it. At least one of the devs gave some input on what the reason for it could be. One of the downsides to being able to freely change their form is that their outer membrane is thin and very permeable. So when it comes to contact with another liquid surface, like water, that the ink within them will just sort of bleed out, and that may be the cause of the problem. Just crazy that there's even a lore reason for this. A lot of games would just chalk it up to, oh, it's an obstacle, and be done with it. Koro Koro manga. Since 2016, Splatoon has had an ongoing manga series. Originally, it ran from 2016 to 2022 with 16 volumes, just being called Splatoon as the title of the manga. Then in 2023, Splatoon 3 Splatland started, being a continuation of the story post Splatoon 3. The manga's gone into a bit of lore that I'll be talking about in future entries, but also had an animation. Kinda. There was an official animated version of the manga, but it's exclusive to Japanese YouTube viewers. It's a colored, lightly animated, voiced-over version of the manga, but like I said, it's restricted to only people in Japan. Tartar's professor was Judd's owner, and just overall sanitization entries are going to be mentioned here. Like mentioned in the last entry, the Splatoon manga can show us parts of the lore that were otherwise just mentioned. Like in the manga, we get a really clear scene of Judd's owner being the one making tartar. Also, if you don't know, because it's not an entry here, Judd is over 10,000 years old. He was put in cryosleep right before all the humans went extinct and woke up around the time of the Great War. But yeah, Judd's owner is also the same person that created Tartar, or Commander Tartar, he's also referred to as. Tartar's whole purpose was to pass down all of humanity's knowledge to the next capable species. The professor intending on preventing the next intelligent species from repeating the same mistakes that led humanity to extinction. But with millennia isolated and alone, Tartar had come up with a different idea. Tartar initially saw hope in the Inklings and Octarians, but would eventually become repulsed by their evolution, needless wars, and fashion obsession, basically resulting in Tartar deciding that they were unfit for its knowledge. With no good successor to humanity's knowledge, why not make your own? That was Tartar's idea, but he needed an army to help. So he'd go on to make these sanitized Octarians as his army, and the way in which he did this was extremely violent. Tartar set up different test chambers you can see around the Octo Expansion DLC, to get the best test subjects together and blend them. Anyone who did extremely good in this was promised a visit to the Promised Land, which ended up being a lie. They would get blended into a green paste, and with this paste of supreme DNA, Tartar called it, he'd cover the world in it, destroying all unworthy life on the planet. This was stopped by the player, but in his plan, the world would have been sanitized. And we could see what that looks like on Octarians throughout the DLC. When sanitized, they lose all sense of individuality, basically turned into a hive mind of violence by Tartar. And it's even mentioned by Marina that they don't have any vital signs. Once sanitized, they're basically dead husks of themselves. Zombies, pretty much. Also, the actual term sanitized doesn't appear in the English version of the game. It was mainly mentioned in the advertising for the DLC and only once in the Japanese version, where the English version has the location belly phase in the escape sequence. The Japanese translates to stomach sanitization site. While a lot of what sanitization actually is in the games is more up to assuming than literal statements, the Japanese art book of Splatoon 2 goes into a lot of depth of what it does to an Octarian. Quote, "When a regular Octarian passes through a machine, their body color instantly changes to green and blue, and their eyes to black. At the same time, they lose all memories of their past lives. We found it to be like brainwashing. Even the devs themselves relate it to being turned into a zombie." It's just crazy that the same guy who made an AI that would go on to try and get rid of Octarians and Inklings also fathered the most chill and kind of only cat in the franchise. I'll get into that later. Judd, the cat, also looks just like my cat, Quill. But back to sanitization. Because not all sanitization was done involuntarily. Deadfish, or Oct, was sanitized. But unlike pretty much all the sanitized Octolings, it was said by the developers of Splatoon in a Japanese Q&A, quote, "It is said that Deadfish wasn't against the idea of being sanitized, and did it so they could give up their doubts and conflicts about production and devote themselves entirely to music." Through the Side Order DLC for 3, it showed that Oct didn't like growing up Octarian. The whole lifestyle was pretty much just training to be the best soldier possible, that the identity of most Octarians was to be a soldier. Oct, however, loved music, creating their identity through it. I mean, they were an artist, but was looked down upon because of it, so they decided to get sanitized. I mean, if your entire life you're told your personality is basically wrong, and all of your passion and creativity is wrong, I can't blame them. But after being sanitized, they were forced to make music for the Deep Sea Metro, still just being a cog in the Octarian military machine. But either way, pre- and post-sanitization, they were rebellious. It's such an interesting way to write a character. Sanitization was already interesting when it was just turning Octarians into zombies, but having a really well-done story about an Octarian going through it willingly because of social demands was not something I was expecting from the Side Order DLC. Luckily, Oct, or Deadfish, is doing a lot better after the DLC, it seems, going on to finally perform their music to their own liking, not forced by the Octarians. Splat Tim. This is Splat Tim, an old meme from the Splatoon community back in 2015. Specifically, July 6, 2015, was the first ever post of them. I can't seem to find it nowadays, but a lot of people have marked it down on wikis. This image was normally just captioned as "he does it," and people made up some wild lore about this Splat Tim character. Like, Splat Tim was apparently a Splat person, a mutated Inkling with special abilities, having the ability to, quote, limit break. like from Final Fantasy. Basically, Splat Tim was just a really old and pretty popular Splatoon meme of a distorted inkling wearing a shirt with a dog on it. Final Splatfest influenced the sequel. So far, with the final Splatfest for each Splatoon game, the ending result has affected the next game. For example, Splatoon 1's final Splatfest was Callie vs. Marie. Marie won, so Callie was the one who got captured and brainwashed for the campaign of 2. Splatoon 2's final Splatfest was Chaos vs. Order. Chaos won, and caused Splatoon 3 to be set in Splatsville, the city of chaos. Then the Side Order DLC was marketed as what would have happened if Order won. So the final Splatfest of Splatoon 3 should have an effect on what happens in Splatoon 4. And the final Splatfest was past, present, or future. And the past ended up winning the vote. So will we be able to learn more about the past of Splatoon in Splatoon 4? I hope so, but who knows when we'll get any news on that. I mean, news on Raiders hasn't exactly existed since the first teaser. Okay, never mind, as I'm scripting, there's finally some news. It's not announced by Nintendo themselves, but the trademark for Raiders was updated, with a publication date of February 17th. It doesn't mean much, but at least it shows they're working on the game. Yeah, I don't know, any news on this franchise right now is super scarce. All idols wave at you Easter egg. In the main hubs of Splatoon 2 and 3, you can see different idols hanging around, just having conversations with each other. And if you look at them for too long, they eventually notice you and wave. In Splatoon 2 specifically, after completing the DLC, the idols instead do their poses they normally do at the end of the show when they notice you. Boss room sounds. When you enter a kettle to fight a boss in Splatoon 1, there's really creepy audio if you just sit at the start and wait on the boss. I'll play a bit of it here, it's just oddly creepy. Shiver is non-binary. When the announcers for Splatoon 3 were revealed, Shiver, Fry, and Big Man, fans noticed that whenever Shiver was referred to, it was never with a specific pronoun, but Big Man and Fry were. It wasn't just a mistranslation either. In the Japanese and English versions of the trailer, and advertisements leading up to the release of the game, Shiver was always referred to with they, leading a lot of fans to believe that Shiver was non-binary. And Nintendo's certainly gotten a lot more progressive over the years. I mean, taking a look at that recent Tamagotchi Life trailer, that's massive for Nintendo. But it turns out for Splatoon 3, it was just an odd choice by the people who made the trailer. It would be revealed through some different language versions of the trailer and the, release of the game that Shiver's female, not non-binary. Idol projection concerts. Since 2016, Nintendo's put on idol projection concerts based on Splatoon, having the announcers, or idols, projected on a massive screen with them performing music live. This type of concert was pretty new for the time as well. Having fancy lights and projections of simple designs had been pretty popular for a while, but the first big projection concert I could find before Nintendo started the Splatoon series was one in 2012. So Nintendo was very much pushing this medium. Fictional languages. The language spoken and written in Splatoon is just called Inkling language, or sometimes Squid language, and it's very strange. Most of the time, especially with the spoken language, it's complete gibberish. Taking a look at the written language though, that's a different story. It's been mostly deciphered, and there's some parts that make sense, like the word apple translates perfect, but a lot of the decorations around places like Inkopolis mean pretty much nothing. Basically, the way it was decoded was through a ton of different advertisements and posts done by Nintendo that showed the Splatoon language alongside a direct translation. Compiling the different letters together eventually got us an alphabet. That's how we know that one sign means apple. You know, the sign with the apple on it. But this isn't the only written language type. There's also what's referred to as bubble script, which looks kind of similar but doesn't relate to the other type at all. And it's with this bubble script that some very silly text was found. In the Splatoon concept art book, it just says on one of the shirts for Jalfonzo, "You suck," in this bubble script. And that's silly and all. This also helped with the decoding of this type of language, but something a lot more offensive was found in-game. Splatoon 2 has a design very similar to the "You Suck" shirt. There's one that directly translates to "F you." And Jalfonso swaps shirts for every day of the week, so every single Tuesday in Splatoon 2, he tells the player to f off. So it was removed, right? No, it's still in the game. Every Tuesday in Splatoon 2, he's wearing this. And it became a bit of a meme when it was discovered. And a fan even made a real-life version of it and wore it to Splatoon tournaments. Squid Sisters are not sisters. The Squid Sisters, Callie and Marie, the announcers for Splatoon 1, are not sisters. They've said themselves that they're cousins, and just call themselves sisters because I guess it sounds better. I mean, squid cousins would certainly sound worse. Splatoon is post-apocalyptic. Splatoon's story takes place thousands of years after now. I mean, the whole story revolves around the sea levels rising and causing humans to go extinct. So obviously it'd be considered post-apocalyptic, but Nintendo heavily led into this. Aside from the jokes about there being skeletons playing the Wii U, the actual environments of specifically the campaigns are very post-apocalyptic. We can see old cities barely darting out of the water, nearly collapsed bridges, and most notably, the Eiffel Tower upside down in Splatoon 3. It's something I wouldn't normally expect from Nintendo, but then there's also the Kirby game, but whenever they do this, it just looks amazing. Inklings are 14 years old. In an interview with the Splatoon 2 producer, Hisashi Nogami, he said, quote, "The previous playable Inklings would be around 16 now, so the new 14-year-old Inklings would step up to the plate. The playable Inklings will still be around 14. So every Inkling you play as in the start of a Splatoon is 14. Looking at you, people who have ruined the Google Images page for this game. Actually, it's been a lot better in recent years, but if you just looked up Splatoon and went to images, just a couple years back, it was pretty bad. Tier 2, Adult Inklings. This is pretty much just an extension of the previous entries, but obviously Inklings do age. At this point, the Inklings in the first game would all be adults by now, but lore-wise, Captain Cuttlefish is 120 years old, Pearl 21, Marina 18, but most adults aren't really gonna be seen. The whole sport of turf war is mainly for Inklings 14 and up, as they can't change forms until 14. So playing multiplayer, you're not gonna see any adult Inklings. Lore-wise, there is a few though. Pearl also mentions her parents occasionally, and they'd obviously be adults, but outside of that, it's pretty much just the icons and important characters to the campaigns that are adults. The rest of Inkopolis. The Inkopolis we see is certainly big, but not nearly as big as it's described in the lore. We don't know a whole lot about the outer parts of Inkopolis, but we can see some things that hint to other places, like a big Ferris wheel, so there could be theme parks. Planes, so there's clearly way more out there that the Inklings can travel to and from from Octo Valley, we can see the place is just massive. The parts we can go to in the sort of hub of the game is just a very tiny portion of Inkopolis. Octarian Power Crisis. The whole reason the Octarians keep coming up and stealing the Great Zapfish is because of their power crisis. After the Great War, they fled into underground domes. But these domes have started to deteriorate and slowly run out of power. I mean, it's sad, they're running out of the most important resource, but stealing Zapfish for sure wasn't the right thing to do. Ink vanishing after battles. As mentioned in Sunken Scroll 7, the ink sprayed during a turf war vanishes almost immediately after the battle ends. How environmentally friendly, and incredibly convenient. And this isn't just a gameplay mechanic that gets mentioned in a scroll and by Callie and Marie. In a later scroll, Scroll 14 of Splatoon 2, it says, "The latest research has produced startling revelations about Inkling ink. Once thought to simply disappear after a while, Inkling ink is actually rapidly disintegrated by airborne microbes." So there is a reason for ink disappearing after battles. It's just really cool when devs give a lore explanation to a gameplay mechanic like this. Pearl says, in the Octo Expansion DLC for Splatoon 2, we can hear Pearl curse. It's censored, but still. It's in a song that she's playing, and it just kinda comes out of nowhere. It was a bit of a joke that Nintendo wasn't letting Pearl curse, and I guess they eventually let her. Racism allegories. Splatoon's Inkling and Octarian interactions can be seen as pretty clear references to real-life racism. Throughout the campaigns, mainly in the DLC for Splatoon 2, it's heavily implied that the tensions are an allegory for racism. That, but more specifically, what's called post-war xenophobia. Basically, the side you were against in a war doesn't like you and you don't like them after the war's over. Exact same thing with Octarians and Inklings. Oh, and seeing some of the things that Splatoon people put as their messages in the hub, yeah, that would definitely just be the equivalent to being racist on social media. Octolings DNI is wild. Playable Octolings planned from the start. Speaking of Octolings, they were only made playable after Octo Expansion released, letting you play as them in multiplayer if you completed the DLC, but they were planned to be playable since the development of the first game was ongoing. You can mod the first game to let you access some unused models, and there's a fully made Inkling model that the player can use. It's the same as Octolings you fight against, but it's still really cool to see that it was an intended feature at some point, but then was implemented later on. After the Octo expansion, with the release of Splatoon 3, Octolings were playable from the get-go, but it was a big deal when the DLC initially released that you could finally play as an Octoling. Ruins of Arc Polaris. The Ruins of Arc Polaris was a stage added to the Salmon Run mode of Splatoon 2 in November of 2018. There's a lot that's really cool about this map, like it being one of the few stages that takes place in the later hours of the day, making it a lot darker than the other maps, but the lore around this stage is by far the most interesting part. In the background, we can see the Arc Polaris, which in the Alterna logs was revealed to be a spaceship, colony ship, that was meant to find a new world for humans to live on. It contained tons of different people, but also types of mammals for its new home. But an accident happened near the edge of the solar system and sent the ship flying straight back to Earth. But there wasn't enough fuel to get it back to Earth when it was initially sent back. It was stranded in orbit for 10,000 years, with everyone in cryosleep. Then eventually the ship crashed down, killing everyone except for a single bear. Bear number 3, or who we now call Mr. Grizz, and then he'd go on to run Grizzco. As far as the stages go for the multiplayer of this series, this one is by far one of, if not the most significant for lore. Sea animals are extinct. The Mr. Grizz I just mentioned had tried to bring back mammals in the campaign of Splatoon 3. He wanted to have his own kind back, but that would have been a forceful transformation on everyone and caused havoc, so it was stopped. So the only remaining mammals would then be Judd and Lil Judd, right? Sea mammals are meant to be fully extinct, and they are, but through some weird translation, for some reason Marina says her landlord is literally a narwhal, which couldn't be true considering all the sea mammals are gone. So outside of this weird translation that isn't canon, there's only 2 cats and a bear for all mammals in this franchise. And speaking of these mammals, Lil Judd is a clone. Yeah, Lil Judd is a clone of Judd. This was revealed in Sunken Scroll 27 of Splatoon 2. Lil Judd plots against Judd, with him planning to supersede his original as judge of turf wars. It's also implied that he's willing to use violence to do this. In the art of Splatoon 2, Lil Judd, quote, is waiting for his chance to stab Judd in the back. And Sunken Scroll 23 in Splatoon 3 seems to describe Lil Judd's preparations for a plan to get rid of Judd. No wonder he's always judging for the bad guy's side. Rabbit and Tofu Prototype. The very original prototype of Splatoon, instead of having anything to do with squids or octopuses, actually centered around tofu. Yeah, this is the original build on screen, a very basic grayscale cube-like version of Splatoon. And those boxes you play as, described by the developers as tofu shooting gray and white paint out of their noses. After this tofu version, the concept of rabbits fighting each other was come up with. Then this would evolve into squids fighting each other. But if you look at the top of the concept art for the rabbits version, yeah, that's Judd, existing in the original concept art for this franchise, making him the oldest remaining character from before, really, the franchise even started. Squid Girl gear set. There's a very unique brand in Splatoon 1 called the Squid Girl. It's unique in that it doesn't have any secondary abilities at all, and it's a part of a tie-in with Squid Girl, the manga and anime series. The set looks spot on to her appearance in the anime, and out of any collaborations that Nintendo could have done for this game, this one makes perfect sense. Official relationship chart. After the Octo expansion DLC was released for Splatoon 2, Nintendo released an official relationship chart for all the different characters in the story, and players really liked having an official relationship chart, as it was a lot easier to follow than sifting through tons of dialogue to figure out who's related to who. But this sparked a trend of relationship charts being made for the game. Like for the 10-year anniversary of Splatoon, this relationship chart was made by Famitsu, a Japanese gaming magazine. Then tons of others have been made by fans. It's just a way to show who's related to who, but still the only official one, at least from what I could find. Information surrounding these charts is kind of hard to find, is still just the one released by Nintendo after Octo expansion. Testfire Beta Music. The Testfire Beta was the beta for Splatoon 2. And some of the music in the beta was different from full release. Mainly, the tracks were changed before looping, having something different right before replaying, but the music you're hearing now is from the beta. An ILS statue in Hammerhead Bridge. The big statue that Tartar uses as a weapon in Octo expansion can actually be seen on the Hammerhead Bridge stage in Splatoon 3, in the background right under the bridge. I'm assuming the reason they didn't have it there after the DLC released for 2 was for spoilers. Being able to see what you did in a story actually affect other parts of the game like multiplayer is so cool. Projector Light Easter Egg. In Splatoon 3 on the Umami Ruin stage, there's a statue that starts to move in the last minute of the match. Its eyes start to glow and the statue completely turns and tries moving. There's a good amount of weird Easter eggs in Splatoon, and a lot of them are in the multiplayer stages like this. Inkling in Toilet. In Splatoon 3, when wandering around Splatsville, you can stumble across a porta potty, and when walking up to it, this is the audio that plays. Yeah, they've been in there for over 3 years now. Inklings are stupid. In the whole story of Splatoon, the Inklings are kinda stupid. I mean, they lost a whole battle because they couldn't wake up on time. And they thought most Octolings were just Inklings with weird haircuts. I mean, they're not stupid enough to really impact the lore a whole lot. Like, they still won the Great Turf War, but they are pretty dumb. Stealing salmon babies. In Salmon Run, you're stealing these golden eggs. And if you look at them up close, there's things swimming around inside. Yeah, you're just stealing salmon babies to use for energy in Salmon Run. Kinda messed up. Splatoon was originally a Mario game. During the development of Splatoon, Nintendo was planning on the game being a Mario game to ensure that the game sold well. Eventually, they decided to change their minds, since they really wanted a new IP, and it clearly worked out for them. Liquid Imagination Crystals. In the third Alterna log, it describes how, so far deep underground, the surrounding environment of Alterna is a bright sky. As life in Alterna moved forward, one scientist discovered a way to make liquid crystals from the bodily fluids of squids. These new crystals could change colors in response to faint and fleeting electrical signals emitted by living organisms. To put that in more human terms, these crystals could read minds, and then output imagery that matched the viewer's innermost thoughts. Humans were enhanced with this new invention and began mass-producing these crystals. Eventually, they lined the walls and roof of Eterna, and as the crystals absorbed the collective desires of those in Alterna, they assumed the appearance of the sky as it was seen on the surface long ago. At last, after 25 years of being confined beneath the earth, humanity could once again look up and see the sky. So the whole sky down in Alterna can completely change appearance. Want it to be a nice rainy night? Maybe to look like your old neighborhood? A big subscribe to Tomikins button? It could be anything. Just a really interesting way to make the humans down there not go insane, having something to remind them of home. Glenn Fiddler. Glenn Fiddler is the CEO of everything to do with multiplayer in Splatoon 3, being the creator of Turf War. We don't know for sure if he's the one who ran Turf War in 1 and 2, but it could certainly be the case. The one quote we have by him that's on a sunken scroll is, "The lobby I've built doesn't have a single standout feature, cause everything in there is feature worthy. If you don't have the greatest Turf War experience ever, I'll eat the smaller of my 2 claws." So he's certainly proud of what he's made for sure, but some fans believe he could be a future villain in the series. Outside of the whole CEO equals evil thing we see in many stories, we've seen other main bad guys be mentioned in previous games. Like Grizz is a great example. He was set up in Splatoon 2 and made to be the main bad guy of Splatoon 3. There's not much outside of that pointing to this guy being the next main bad guy in Splatoon, but it's always a possibility. Nogami poses in credits running gag. Hisashi Nogami is the producer of Animal Crossing and Splatoon, and he's known for doing poses whenever he shows up to talk about Splatoon. And these poses often make it into the credits of Splatoon games whenever his name is mentioned. It's become a long-running gag, and basically whenever you see him do a new pose, it's gonna be in the credits of the next Splatoon game. How do haircuts work? A lot of different gameplay mechanics of Splatoon are purely for gameplay, but tend to have an actual explanation as to how they're possible. Like morphing into a squid is at least somewhat explained by devs and sunken scrolls. Haircuts though, well, they're not haircuts, are they? I mean, this isn't hair, it's tentacles. A body part that should have nerves. This hasn't been talked about in game or by devs at all. But there's two ways they could go about getting haircuts. One, where the tentacles don't have nerves, and that makes sense for getting a haircut, super easy. Or two, they do have nerves, and it's just an extremely painful process to change your hair. It's just one of those things that doesn't have a lore explanation, and if it was any other franchise, it wouldn't even be on the Iceberg. But considering Splatoon has a lore explanation as to why falling in water kills you, you just think there'd be something about this. Official Encadia map. Inkopolis, or Greater Encadia, as it's also called, where the main city of Splatoon is located, actually has an official map. On Nintendo's site, in a section where there was an interview with the makers of Splatoon, lies this map. Here's an English translated version of it. It's really cool to be able to see a big map of the world of Splatoon. And according to the devs, the distance between Inkopolis Plaza and Square is about a mile. So this map is pretty big. I mean, that's a very small portion of it. It's just really cool to have a good sense of scale for where everything is. Not a lot of Nintendo games, especially ones like Splatoon, will have something like this. Jellyfish touching the floor. Round Inkopolis, you'll come across jellyfish touching the floor. Not like standing. I mean actually stretching out their arms onto the floor, and the reasoning is kind of silly. In the Splatoon 2 art book, it says that they lick their hand after splashing a road puddle, since they have no concept of dirty or clean. Yeah, they're just drinking water. I mean, if dirty or clean doesn't affect them, why not do it this goofy way? Fry says fuck. During one of the Splatfests in Splatoon 3, Fry can be heard cursing. I mean, it's definitely not meant to sound like that, but I'll play the clip here, and it really just sounds like she's saying, "What the f?" Splatoon 3 usernames. In the promotions for Splatoon 3, there were made-up usernames for the characters, some of them being puns and references to different marine life. There's the obvious ones, like Yarwhal, but there's also ones that only make sense if you know Japanese, like the Veronica one. It's a mix of just saying Veronica, but the Ika in the name is spelled with a K. Aika or Ika in Japanese means squid. Then there's another that's Taco Truck, but taco is spelled with a K, that meaning octopus in Japanese. Tier 3. Project Splatoon 3. Before Splatoon 3 released, there was a really well-made concept page by Alexis Flem. That's how Google's saying it's pronounced, sorry if I'm butchering that. But the concept is just insane. There's a handful of things that did end up being in Splatoon, like a bow weapon, one of the launchers, some hairstyles. I mean, this took them a year to make, and you can certainly see it. The art is all just gorgeous, and the concepts for pieces of the story would have been super amazing to see in a Splatoon game. There are tons of things that aren't in Splatoon 3, like most of it since it's just a concept, but a lot of it looks very similar quality to what you'd expect to see from Nintendo. When this released, a lot of Splatoon YouTubers were making videos on it, and honestly, I just hope someone from Nintendo sees this page. There's a lot of really great ideas here. Removed headgear. There's tons of gear that we can see previous versions of, like complete redesigns, color changes, lighting differences, but there's some that were just completely removed. These are some of the scrapped gear for the first game. 4 types of shirts and what's called a warrior headdress, obviously removed to avoid any controversy with that one. As for Splatoon 2, there was a Judd-themed face mask that was cut, an Octolite gear set that was never added, and a Tentacles helmet, which was even shown in the Direct but never implemented into the game. As for Splatoon 3, it's really just the icons for campaign gear that we can see left over. There was just tons of gear that went unused in all of these games. Splatoon 1 Laughing Statues. In Splatoon 1, if you played during a Splatfest, where the maps would all be set at nighttime, or hack it nowadays because you can't do that anymore, you can hear an Easter egg with the statues on the museum map. Here's what it sounds like. Octoling Pearl. Some of the early concept art for Splatoon 2 had Pearl as an Octoling. Her whole character looked way different, and Marina would have been an Octoling as well, like she still is. We can only really guess as to why this was changed, but I think there's some pretty reasonable explanations. One, it'd just kinda be weird to have 2 Octolings completely take over for Inklings. After all, Inklings are the vast majority. It'd just seem kind of out of nowhere. But 2, Pearl and Marina having such a strong friendship and bond, despite being different species, was a really cool thing to see. I mean, granted, it's only an Octo expansion when Pearl learns that Marina's an Octoling, but even past that, they're friends. The prejudice for Octolings didn't tear down their friendship, and that's a really good story for the 2 icons. Having Pearl be an Octoling as well just would kind of get rid of that. Crayola Scoot. Crayola Scoot is, well, it's not Splatoon, that's for sure. There's not as many blatant copies of games as I've seen out there. Crayola Scoot is basically just Splatoon but with scooters and crayon, I guess. It's also pretty rough on the eyes. The game's just a blatant copy of Splatoon. I'm not against copies wanting to do similar things to Splatoon. I mean, if Foam Stars wasn't dead on arrival, that game looked genuinely decent. But this Crayola Scoot? Yikes. Tartar changed in Noah localization. Tartar, the main bad guy of Octo Expansion, is a completely different character in the non-English versions of the game. Instead of the somewhat comedic, more modern style of talking that Tartar uses, instead, in Japan, he was a much more cold and scary sounding character. It's a thing that happens with Nintendo of America when they do translations. I mean, a shift in tone is fine, but in the past they've messed up a lot more with translations. Like, they gave Ganondorf the surname Dragmire in the Western manual of A Link to the Past. Yeah, that wasn't canon until just localizing it, they added that for no reason. And then Nintendo decided to just roll with it later on. They also used to just mess up names entirely, but they've certainly gotten better with it. The shift in tone that Tartar had from Japanese to English is insane though. Tartar's a silly character over here, but there, way different. Also, the footage I'm using for this entry is by Rassicas. They're not an entry on this iceberg, but really deserve to be. About every single entry or anything you can think of relating to this franchise, they've made a video on. They're a YouTuber that's just insanely dedicated to the Splatoon franchise. Octo Valley World 4 Skip. So Splatoon's got unique movement mechanics. I mean, not in every game can you turn into a squid, but with these unique movement mechanics, the speedrunning scene is made crazy. Like in Splatoon 1, you can skip the entirety of World 4. By jumping in squid form to this ledge and hopping onto this box, past the exit for World 4, you can skip the whole world. Once you get to World 5, you can unlock the shortcut to be able to warp to wherever you want, and all of World 4 is just skipped. It's an insane time skip for speedrunning to say the least. You're literally skipping a fifth of the campaign with 2 jumps. Pareidolia in songs. Yeah, I had to look up how to say that word. Pareidolia is basically recognizing patterns in something like videos, images, audio, and creating a meaning that isn't there from it. Like when you see a face in the clouds, or that Yenny Laurel recording.
Laurel.
By the way, apparently Laurel was what the person was saying originally. I can still only hear Yenny. But in Splatoon, when there's lyrics and quotes being sung, they're not real words. They're a mix of hiragana and katakana syllables to sound like gibberish. But you can sometimes make out sounds that sounds like words you'd understand. And with the lyrics on the screen that sound like what, say, the Squid Sisters are singing, it really seems like there's actual lyrics to these songs. But no, just gibberish. Inkblot Academy ringing phone. In the Inkblot Academy map during Splatfest, the phones can be heard ringing, and if you go up to them and wait, the phone gets answered. And what sounds like either Inklings or Octolings laughing on the other end can be heard. It's similar to the statue moving Easter egg, something that not a lot of people are going to come across naturally, but it's a pretty cool Easter egg, if only we could understand what they were saying. Great Zapfish and Piranha Pit. Speaking of Easter eggs, a massive one is in the Piranha Pit map. Around the 1 minute mark, if you look out to sea, you can see the Great Zapfish barely peeking out of the water. Then a few seconds later, it's staring right at you. Just an insanely big appearance by the Zapfish that no one was expecting. Are you ready to join something bigger than yourself connections? While getting manipulated by Tartar to go to the supposed promised land in Octo Expansion, Tartar asks, "Are you ready to join something bigger than yourself?" It's a slightly unsettling line by itself, knowing that he's a bad guy now, but this line is also used in Splatoon 3, albeit a bit different. Grisco asks, You ready to be something bigger than yourself? Just another example of the main bad guy trying to manipulate the player. This time just less original. Global map and ammo nights. In the back of ammo nights, we can see the world map of Splatoon. Here's the actual texture of it, and it's kind of similar to our map. I tried to line up our real world map with this. I didn't do the best job of it, but you can see a lot of the countries were kind of reshaped or just entirely removed from the Splatoon map. So now not only do we have the map of Inkopolis, but we also have an entire world map of Splatoon. Booyah Base is a pun for Booyah Bays. Booyah Base, the big mall in Splatoon, is a pun on Bouillabaisse, Bays, pronounced almost exactly the same, but Bouillabaisse Bays is a French seafood stew. Out of all the puns they can make for naming schemes, this one I would have never gotten without looking it up. According to the one French person I know, it's really popular in southern France. I'm still just surprised it sounds so similar to Bouillabaisse. Offensive Mario Kart 8 Inkling Gesture. When Inkling was added to Mario Kart 8, when they hit someone, nowadays they just raise their arm a little to celebrate. But when they were first added, they had their other hand grab their upper arm. And in parts of the world, doing this is pretty much the exact same as flipping someone off. So it was quickly removed by Nintendo. Sun Drying Ritual. When Inklings reach the age of 50, they often do what's called a sun drying ritual, which is what happened to Cap'n at the end of Splatoon 3. Even if it wasn't himself doing it, it's basically drying themselves out so they can live longer. It also makes it so they can't produce ink anymore. It just completely changes an Inkling so they can grow older. Octarian Salmonid Trade Agreement. In the Salmonid Field Guide in Splatoon 2 and 3, it stated that the Octarians and Salmonids have a trade agreement, basically exchanging eggs to give power to the Octarians for Octarian technology like gushers. It's a one-off line mentioned in this guide, but it explains how Salmonids have the technology they have. Would have been a much better deal if they had, better weapons to fight Inklings and have a chance, but no, they're still too weak to really stand too much of a chance against Inklings. Paintman Go and Sepia Go. Paintman Go is another very bad Splatoon ripoff. This time not Crayola, just some random Chinese mobile game company. It's obviously really bad. I mean, just everything about it, the ink refill timer, enemies popping up out of nowhere. Like, every aspect of this game is terrible. But they used to have a somewhat decent ripoff of Splatoon called Sepia Go, and this one is hard to even call a ripoff as it was literally just Splatoon on the phone. And as bad and literally legal as this was, hence the later rebranding, it was oddly well made. Like, the assets were just completely ripped from Splatoon. If I didn't know any better and someone had just showed me gameplay of this and said Nintendo ported Splatoon to mobile, I would have believed them. Tier 4. Captain Cuttlefish is a squid. Despite his name having Cuttlefish in it, Captain Cuttlefish is most likely a squid, and there's a lot pointing to that. To start, his eyes are round, unlike real cuttlefish. If he was designed to be a cuttlefish, they would have most likely had a W shape. Second, his hair is a carbon copy of the default Inkling boy, a copy of Squid's hair. And third, one of the biggest reasons, is when he's dried out in Splatoon 3, he just is a squid. Plus, he calls himself a squid through multiple lines of dialogue. The reason he's called Captain Cuttlefish was probably just for alliteration by the translation team. But some fans were convinced that he was actually a cuttlefish. National Institute of Longevity Sciences. The NILS statue at the end of Octo Expansion had people puzzled for quite a while, mainly in what the abbreviation even means. One theory is that it could stand for the National Institute of Longevity Sciences, a real-life agency that deals with science around things to prolonging life. In reality, though, the NILS statue most likely isn't an abbreviation. The most likely origin for the name is that the NILS is a reference to the statue's Japanese name, Neruzu-zo. The Neru in the Japanese name of the statue refers to the Japanese name for Kamaboko. Also, the term nil means zero, possibly being a reference to Tartar's pretty clear destructive purpose with using the statue. Inkopolis Square Out of Bounds Glitch. In both Splatoon 1 and 3, you can glitch out of bounds in Inkopolis. In the first game, there's some cool stuff you can see, like the back of Inkopolis Tower, but there's not a whole lot back there. As for 3 though, it's much prettier. You can access this whole park area that wasn't accessible before, and get up close with some jellyfish characters that you could only see from afar originally. Sanitized Octoball. Despite sanitized Octoballs never appearing as enemies in Octo Expansion, they were shown in the DLC. Just in the background in these boxes towards the end of the DLC, but yeah, we never got to see these as enemies, and it's kind of strange considering they were fully modeled. Book of Madai. One of the sunken scrolls you get in Splatoon 2 seems to be a prophecy or something at least biblical. It reads, "When smoke rises from the 7 rings, the pink fish will emerge from the sea, devouring all of the creatures on the land." The Book of Madai, Chapter 10, Verse 10. Well, it turns out that you, the player, are a part of this prophecy. The image for the sunken scroll shows these 7 rings in the sky, and you see those same rings in Big Run. Those pink fish emerging from the sea, salmon. Just crazy to see something mentioned in Splatoon 2 at launch, referencing something in Splatoon 3, and that it'd be something this big. Top half of Skull Bandana. The Skull Bandana you can wear in Splatoon actually has a real-life version. A version that shows you what the rest of the design looks like. It's pretty standard, but really cool that we can see the full design. In the games, we only see half of it, which, granted, if you flip it, that is pretty much the design, but it's just nice that it's a real thing we can see. Fried hair. There's a lot of hairstyles that Nintendo made concepts for, but never implemented. One of the more popular ones being fried hair. I could only find 2 mentions of this hairstyle being called fried, but it would have been really sick to actually see a new type of textured hair. Unfortunately though, this is yet to have been implemented. Inklings went to the moon. When looking up at the moon in Splatoon, we can see a squid-shaped structure on it. It's small from our view, but for it to be that visible on the moon, it's gotta be massive. Clearly Inklings have gone to space and the moon since you had to have been up there to build this, but the size of this thing is just insane. YouTuber RiriZone did the math on it, and the monument is 86 miles or 146 kilometers wide. That's insane. If they've got the technology and dedication to build that big a monument on the moon, I wouldn't be shocked if they've explored way more of the solar system than we have. Tier 5. Potential Daft Punk inspiration for Alterna OST. The music for Alterna sounds very similar to Daft Punk. I mean, the devs haven't said it's inspired by them or anything, it's just fans finding similarities, but the electronic style for sure sounds extremely similar. I obviously can't play Daft Punk here because YouTube would take down the video, but comparing them, it does sound very similar. NILS Mask. This NILS mask lies unused in Splatoon 2. And it's creepy to say the least, and also doesn't really look all that much like the NILS statue. Fans have been able to mod it back into the game, but it just looks disturbing. I can see why this was cut. Agent 8 canonically dies. One of the developers of Octo Expansion had pointed out the significance of Agent 8 dying during the escape sequence. In pretty much all of Octo Expansion, dying and respawning are just a part of the game. But in the escape sequence, if you die, if Agent 8 dies, the characters freak out. Marina and Pearl are all panicked over the radio. So respawning in this end sequence is just rewinding time as opposed to normal respawning. Agent 8 dying in that sequence is just a canon death for the character. Marie's pet. At Cuttlefish Cabin, we can see Marie's pet. Well, we don't really know what it is, at least from looking in-game. Just from in-game we knew it existed and that it was cute, and that's about it. But looking at the concept art, it's shown that her cousin Callie caught it for her, and it's meant to be a pet scallop. Just very hard to see in game. Splatoon Rule 34. Splatoon Froyo. There was a Splatoon collaboration with Froyo, having a Squidsicle, Inkberry, and Squid Ink flavor. As a part of this collab, someone tweeting with hashtags would win a special Wii U with Splatoon. Just a very odd choice for a collaboration. Octarian Executioner. One of the cut enemies from Splatoon 1 are what people have dubbed the Octarian Executioners, and I can see the Executioner inspiration, but they look like something entirely different. Let's just say about every post I came across on this, people thought the black looked a lot more like what would normally be leather. Yeah, you can see why they were cut from the game. Agent 1, 2, Celebrity MC, and Celebrity DJ in Mario Maker 2. In Mario Maker 2, there's official levels made by different Splatoon characters, or at least implied to be. Take this one for example. The beginning of the description reads, Yo, this Fire Junior Clown Car course I made is off the hook, being a clear reference to Splatoon's Off the Hook. Nintendo has made all these levels just being references to other Nintendo franchises, so there's other ones for Splatoon as well. Octarian spies in Manta Maria. In the art book for Splatoon 2, it shows a ship that Octarians use. It's disguised as a fishing ship in the waters around Manta Maria. It's really hard to read, like I had to find a ton of different images to make out the text here, but it says, an Octoling ship disguised to look like a squid fishing vessel in order to gain intel on Inklings. It's carrying a telescope, antenna, and fuel for a lengthy journey, covered in metal sheets and wooden planks so those on board won't be spotted. While it's yet to be seen in game, I mean, who's out looking in the waters for a fishing ship? It could be there and we just haven't seen it. Or I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing it in a future game. Tier 6, Messfest Obstacle Course. As a part of promoting Splatoon 1's initial launch, there was a big Splatoon Messfest setup. It was an obstacle course set up at Santa Monica Pier, and it was really well made. Massive set pieces to go around, stations for people to play the demo of Splatoon. I mean, it was really well done. Also, James Marsden, the main guy in the Sonic movies and actor of Cyclops, appeared. I kinda got jump scared seeing him. He's the last person I'd expect to see there, but awesome for him. Splattershot in Bluey. There's no mistaking it. A literal Splattershot appeared in Bluey. I don't know why or don't really know what to say about it, but it's there, just in the show. 8-Ball Ranked Mode. This 8-Ball that was in Octo Expansion actually lied in the code of Splatoon 2 way before the release of the DLC, and the unused code that was tied to it suggested that it was going to be a part of a ranked battle mode featuring an 8-ball, and this mode would have included the 8-ball at the center of the stage, and the players would have to guide it to the other team's goal. So basically a ranked Splatoon soccer. Playable Octolings in Splatoon 2 Test Fire. Models of the playable Octolings were found as early on in the series as the Splatoon 2 Global Test Fire, where the male Octolings have a hairstyle that looks extremely close to the finalized punk hairstyle we got in Splatoon 3. Then the female model used the enemy Octoling hair. But it's crazy that these leaks were, well, for one, real, but also that they were so significant. It was a massive deal when Octo Expansion came out that players could finally play as Octolings, and it's just crazy that this was leaked so early on, before the full release of Splatoon 2. DJ Sango. During Splatoon 2, Agent 3 started DJing. We can see in the art book that DJ Sango is going against Marina, but it's very clearly Agent 3. And if appearance alone didn't convince you, the San or San in Sango comes from how 3 is said in Japanese, simply San. Curling Bomb Floor Cleaner. A curling bomb themed floor cleaner was made and sold in Japan, and they looked super accurate to the in-game versions. They just cleaned up bits of dust, not as fancy as, say, a Roomba, but it's Splatoon themed, so it's better. And looking at eBay, a lot cheaper than an actual Roomba. Sanitized Inner Agent 3 glitch. When doing the Inner Agent 3 fight in Octo Expansion, there's a weird glitch that can happen where if you die at the same time as Agent 3, for some reason, all of the audio for the fight just cuts out. The sound effects and music just entirely gone. I'll play a clip of it here. It's just really weird. "247 Siblings. This is High Tide Era, an indie band in Splatoon. From left to right, their names are Kuze, Taka, and Nishida, and they're all different species, being a stonefish, double-lined fusiler, and herring. And the herring, Nishida, is said to be the youngest of 247 siblings, which, I mean, is crazy, but in real life, if the mortality rate for herring wasn't so awful, it wouldn't be uncommon. They lay around 200,000 eggs at a time, but only about 1 in every 10,000 end up surviving. Camp Triggerfish in Coronation Street. On the June 19th, 2020 episode of Coronation Street, a British soap opera, the character Max can be seen playing Splatoon 2 in Turf War at Camp Triggerfish. Just a weird random appearance of Splatoon in the last place you'd expect. Also, this show's apparently been on for 60 seasons. I thought Doctor Who was insane. That's That's crazy. Dear White People Volume 2 Episode 8. This is another weird appearance of Splatoon being mentioned. Either OBS or Netflix has got some type of copy protection, so I can't really show the clip. But here's where Splatoon is just randomly mentioned in the show Dear White People.
Oh, right. That's right, I missed last week. I'm sorry, I must have gotten confused.
It's cool. Just means more time to level up in Splatoon.
References in Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony. Lastly, for this string of reference entries, in Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony, that's a mouthful, there's a magazine item that has the description of a teen magazine featuring many models just enjoying their summer. This magazine is meant for kids, not squids. NILS statue digestive system. In the concept art for the NILS statue in Octo Expansion, we can sort of see its organs. I mean, they certainly aren't like this in the final game, but you do go through parts of its body, like going through a part in the ending that's literally called the stomach. So the structuring for these organs does exist, but being able to see it in concept art with color and everything, it's just a lot creepier. Inkling Great Turf War WMDs. In the Splatoon 1 art book, there's a short manga that's basically a prologue to the game's story. And in this short bit, we see that the Inklings used massive Inkling monsters in war. For some reason, these guys are hardly ever mentioned. This seems to be the only actual depiction of them we've seen. And they're not just big squids. I mean, those boxes off to the left seem to be a city, and they are towering over it. Maybe the Great Turf War was one with these things. Hopefully we find out more about the Great Turf War in the next game. The last Splatfest for Splatoon 3 did end up with Past winning, so Splatoon 4 has a good chance of telling us more about this war. All we really know about the war is that the Inklings eventually won. Not exactly how they won, but maybe it was because of these massive, scary Inkling creatures. Deep Sea Rave Missing People. In the Japanese exclusive Splatoon art book, a deep sea rave was mentioned. And you know, it's Splatoon, Inklings love music. A lot of people went, right? Well, the amount was a bit staggering. It reads, the Low Water Party, or as Inklings call it, LWP, became one of the largest raves in Greater Inkopolis. This year's venue was held in the deep sea, regardless of high or low tide. Despite knowledge of the party spreading only through word of mouth, over 60 million Inkpolitans rushed into the deep sea, causing the water level to rise by 30 centimeters. That's just an unfathomable amount of people to go to a single concert. And what's even more crazy about this rave is not all the people came back out of the water. Right after that excerpt, it reads, out of nowhere, a mix of music that gave off a mimetic feeling could be heard, signaling the start of the party. They didn't show up, but in that moment, everyone was convinced that those bumping beats came from none other than the artist who had disappeared in the deep sea, Deadfish. After that, major artists started appearing one after another, such as DJ Octavio featuring Callie, Bob Dub, and even an impromptu appearance of the Rainmaker team. And the biggest highlight of this year's rave was probably the participation of the oh-so-popular Off the Hook. The 8-hour-long DJ battle between Marina and Sango, as well as the rap battle between Pearl and MC Craig filled with language too vulgar to hit the airwaves or to put on paper, caused several ravers to forget about returning to the real world and go missing. It is said that many have still yet to return to the surface. So not only is it most likely the biggest concert ever held in any real-life or Nintendo game, people also just didn't come back from it. Still no word from some of the attendees. It's crazy that such a seemingly massive event is only mentioned once in a Japanese exclusive art book. And that's it for the Splatoon Iceberg. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, maybe like and subscribe. And my next video is going to be very long. It's about 2,000 entries. This one was like 260 and a lot had to get cut, so stay tuned for that. It's still a ways off, but it'll be multiple hours long. Alright, I'm gonna be so honest with you guys, this video is like 25 seconds away from being completely done and it being an hour, and seeing the video as an hour long makes you want to click it a lot more than 59 minutes. It just looks more appealing. So, before the video ends, I did want to mention just some random stuff. One, sorry for the video taking so long. I had a stomach bug, I was very sick. That delayed me a lot. Then also college obviously was a big thing. But I also wanted to mention that I've been using the Discord a lot more recently, and it's been pretty cool. So I'll have a link in the description of this, and if you go to the channel links, it's there as well. Anyways, thank you for listening to my exactly 40-second rant, and I'll see ya. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, week, month, and I'll see you in the next one.